Hey guys, check it out. It's Ratchet and Clank and there are mountains. Exciting. So you guys know what to do. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out. Okay, and you see by the topic title of the video, we are going to talk about bullying today, which is a difficult topic to stay zen about, and that's why I brought it up, because I had to fight for my zen during a situation this week where somebody decided to contact me through my website to talk about something I was doing on Twitter regarding an anti-bullying group that was doing an interview with a known bully. And if you know what I'm talking about, great. Please don't name names. I'm trying to deal with the issue, not the people, for a reason, because some of the people involved in this whole mess have a tendency to make things about them and make things go off the rails very, very, very quickly, and I don't want that. This is too important a topic to talk about and have everything go crazy and have people make it about them instead of the actual issue. It's difficult in situations like this when well-meaning people mess up. And I mean, we all do it, right? We all do things without being completely aware of the consequences of what we're doing. Life is not as simple as turning robots into sheep. And see, that was kind of bullying. I am ambivalent about this. Then again, they were aliens, but once they turn into a harmless sheep, do I have a right to sort of whack them? We don't have to think about this stuff in a video game because it's slapstick. We know it's not real. All this talk about empathy in games, but it is an element of empathy knowing, this isn't a real sheep I'm just going to hit in the butt with a wrench. If it was a real sheep, absolutely not. That's a real thing. And that is the thing about empathy. We don't have to empathize with a fake sheep because a fake sheep has no real feelings. But someone real does. And the problem, the challenge with the internet, I don't think it's a problem, because if you spend enough time on social networks, you start to recognize that, no, the people you're talking to are real people on the end. Just because you can't see them and you can't see facial expressions and all that stuff doesn't mean they're not real people, and it doesn't mean you can't really hurt their feelings and toughen up. It used to be a fair thing to say, grow a thicker skin on the internet. If you don't like it, don't be here. But the reality is that services like Facebook and increasingly Twitter, especially for people in certain lines of work, you have to be on it whether you like it or not. And that changes the playing field, because then all of a sudden we get into people being required to opt out instead of opting in. And you don't want to drive someone off a service if you're not a bully, that they need to do their job or they need to excel in their job. And that's the tricky thing about social networks, is you don't technically need to be on Twitter and Facebook to do certain things, but wow, it helps a lot in terms of, I find it's most useful for making contacts for interviews. It puts me in contact, especially with the Party Chatter series, which we'll be resuming this week, hopefully, if the scheduled interview goes off as scheduled. Whoops, I wasn't paying attention. I fell in the water. But I digress. The thing about social networks is it has changed. The significance and the sort of requirement. Shoot, not enough to level up quite yet, but the requirement to be on some of these social networks makes how we think about them different, because I am totally in support of these message boards or shit posting boards or, those sort of things. And I know people who come here listen to, I'm not going to judge people for what they do on those boards. Those boards are, well, other than spreading someone's personal information, you shouldn't dox, period, because there are unintended consequences to that stuff. We'll do Roglar. But other than that, people want to talk smack on those boards, fine. People want to swear and use, words that they know are rude because that's the lingo of that board. That's fine. I don't care. I understand nobody's getting hurt when someone's using those terms on 4chan where people can't see them, versus on Twitter where people are forced to see them. And that's, that's empathy again. What's the critical thing there? Nobody's getting hurt. And that's the difference between a shit poster and a bully, right? A shit poster stops when they realize they're hurting someone. A bully keeps going because they think hurting someone is funny. And this is the tricky thing on the internet when we start getting into online bullying and these very, very tricky discussions of how to deal with this sort of thing. And I think that a lot of the services that have popped up online very, very quickly and gotten a lot of press attention because they have the right friends, I think they're actually making the problem worse by making the whole thing such a hot button that people have a vested interest in trying to prove the hypocrisy. What we know about bullying is that the nature of bullying has changed from when it was a simple calculus of, people physically intimidating each other. Obviously, that's not the paradigm we're dealing with on the internet, right? Nobody can physically intimidate anyone because it's all in cyberspace. And so bullying on the internet is much less one kid threatening to beat up another kid in the schoolyard, and much more about this thing I talk about a lot, alternative aggression, or relational aggression. And relational aggression is a very different thing because the people who, would normally be empowered to do something about it can't even see it. Far too often the victims of the actual bullying get treated like they're the ones doing something wrong because people see the reaction. Instead of the original thing that set everything off in the first place. Because whoa, I'm gonna drown. Because relational aggression is all about manipulation and drowning. A relational bully or a relational aggressor uses that awareness that the world has issues dealing with legitimate upset, legitimate anger, especially anger. That there's this idea that there's this idea that if you get angry at something, then you're a bully, you're being aggressive, the whole thing. No, I mean, sometimes people get angry. And sometimes you have to be a big enough grown-up to recognize that either the person is yelling, but they're not yelling at you. And you can ask them to calm down, but there's, labeling them as something is not right. It's actually not showing any empathy. When someone is angry, there's often some pretty complex emotions underlying that anger, whether it be fear or, a sense of feeling threatened or, many other things in that regard. And a truly, an approach based in empathy recognizes that, not all anger is, I was pressing the wrong button. Ah! The problem with social networking is that we're so hyper aware of the phenomenon of trolling, and yet it's not a good kind of aware. It's not an informed kind of aware. Anybody that acts aggressively or impulsively or, angrily on the internet is labeled a troll. And that's not what trolling is. A troll is somebody who's not emotionally invested in the outcome of a conversation or a circumstance or something like that. And a lot of people get labeled trolls that aren't. Now, some people are quick to label people trolls because they are engaging in relational aggression. They're using popularity and relationships as a weapon against a person of lower social status. And that is a form of bullying. And that's a form of bullying that, oh my God level, it's a form of bullying that is very prevalent on the internet and video game levels that don't give you enough oxygen to get through a level. Okay, no mistakes me. But I watch this happen. I watch this happen a lot, and it does upset me because I know there are some good people being labeled bad people by bad people pretending to be good people. And yes, that was very topsy-turvy. Welcome to the difficult world of bullying. And this is stuff that, you know, I first became aware with my work with youth. But what we know about the impact of this kind of stuff in you know, starting around the 8th grade is it affects people their entire lives. It makes it harder for people to trust other people, especially certain types of people. It's a particular issue with women being able to trust other women. Book recommendation, Odd Girl Out by Rachel Simmons. It's the absolute best book I've ever read on this particular phenomenon. And died in the exact same place again. This is sort of a metaphor for bullying. Trying your best over and over and over again and having to start all over again no matter what. Because there's just this one element of the social circumstance that you cannot get past despite your best efforts. And this is a major issue for a lot of gamers because as people who left some pretty beautiful, heartfelt comments on my website, lianakurzner.com, have pointed out that this is of particular concern for people on the autism spectrum and other types of neuroatypical people, because it's really easy to say, oh, they're being a creeper, or oh, they're you know, they need to learn empathy, they need to learn, and that's when we get into, you know, haha, here's my clever layering, and I'm gonna freaking die again. But, you know, I talked earlier in the week about the difference between two different types of empathy, cognitive empathy and affective empathy. And only one is affected by the autism spectrum. And it's the one, I'm blanking on which one it is right now, but the other one, that it doesn't mean that people who have trouble reading social cues and possibly acknowledging or recognizing correctly the feelings of other people, it doesn't mean that once they understand those feelings, they don't care. There are different cognitive functions that take place in completely different parts of the brain. And I don't understand why people in gaming who claim to be experts on the social dynamics of video game communities act like, you know, gamers should be acting like, I don't frickin' know, members of the PTA or, you know, the Glee Club. No, it's not. Gamers are gamers. And, you know, there's a high rate of neuroatypicality in a lot of fandoms, but definitely gaming. And this isn't something that can be ignored. We can't come up with effective strategies that don't recognize this reality of this group. And it doesn't, then people go, you're saying all gamers are autistic. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's a reality, and when people are a minority of, you know, the general population, but I was almost there. All right. Okay, so we've jumped ahead a bit. Sorry about that, guys. That constant loop of dying was, I determined, not fun to watch. So instead of trying to do it while I was talking, I paused, focused exclusively on getting through that section to the game, and now we're back. Because I want to talk what does and doesn't work, and where a lot of these online anti-bullying advocacy things go wrong. And the
Slick, what do you got for me?
the nothing.
What do
You
I
think?
look like? A magician? Some
Yes.
magical being of wonder who can conjure up a restricted Gadgetron weapon? Get out of here.
Well, okay. Irony. Can I get through here? But what we know about what works in anti-bullying situations is it's the behavior of third parties. And the problem with a lot of these online anti-bullying advocacy groups is that they try to focus on the aggressor and the target, right? Which is not where the effective focus goes. You can't just tell a bully, don't bully. A lot of bullies are not entirely aware of what they're doing, or they've been bullied themselves, and they think it's either the way of the world, or they think that it's only fair that they get to bully people because they were bullied themselves. And I am hearing a lot of this, that poor behavior or tolerating poor behavior is okay because you have no other choice. Yes, there's always another choice. Walking away is a choice. And that is the thing that is really unfun with effective, harm reduction strategies when it comes to bullying, is sometimes the only way to deal with the problem is to get away from the problem. And that's characterized as running away, even though it's not. I like to explain it as, like, in a run and gun like this, the object is to beat the boss. But not every type of game is like that. There are some survival horror games where the entire idea is to just get out with your skin mostly intact. And that's what bullying really is. Bullying is bullying because it's a paradigm where someone who is of higher social status or of greater strength in one way or another is leveraging that against you, meaning you can't fight fair. You can't even fight unfair, because when it really is bullying, it means that a person is leveraging the fact that they have more power than you. And you know how it works. You guys play games that when you're fighting a significantly better player, or you're fighting, more accurately, someone who is playing, you're a level 5 character and they're a level 80 character, you're not going to win that fight, no matter how many times you try. You need, battles that you can fight are battles that are more evenly matched. And bullying is not an evenly matched battle. And so any initiative that encourages people to fight their bullies in some way is misguided. The goal is to get a person's life back some way. Now that could mean leaving. And unfortunately, especially in circumstances of workplace bullying, the sad truth is, if it's really that bad and it's having a negative impact on you, you have to find another job. The mistake that a lot of people end up making, and I was guilty of this myself, is that by staying in the situation, you think you're fighting, but all you're doing is continue to give somebody you can't hope to beat more target practice. And that is an incredibly humbling thing to realize. And it's very, very hard to recognize also that if you are being bullied, it's because there are third parties that are making that possible. And so it's often not just about getting away from one person. It's about getting away from that entire group that is giving that person the power to make you miserable. And that is a uniquely difficult thing for gamers to do, because a lot of people have bullying in their past. A lot of people are tired of running. And the idea that there are now bullies in a community that people came to get away from the bullying in the rest of their lives, that is hard. Now, the reality is, that's life. You know, we talk a lot about safe spaces on university campuses, but precisely the reason universities are supposed to be training you for life is because there is no easy mode in real life. There's no training session for dealing with horrible situations. They happen and you learn as you go. I think one of the worst things about the socialization of millennial socialization is this idea that everybody is supposed to be friends and everybody is supposed to be together and no one is allowed to just not like another person. People try to intervene, people try to get involved, they try to mediate, and unless you're a trained mediator, you have just as much likelihood of making that, and if you wonder why I paused, because the earphones fell out of my ears and I had to put them back in. But as I was saying, unless you're a trained mediator in situations like that, you are as likely to make the situation worse as you are to help, you know, unless they're family members or other type of people who you know really, really well. What? Where am I going? There. Okay. So that's what you shouldn't do. What can you do? Well, the best thing you can do for someone is to just is fully leveled up.
That's one of our best sellers.
Yes. The best thing you can do is be there for a person, and this is not platitudes. This is actually what experts say works. Finding circumstances where people don't have to think about it all the time, that it's just a break from the situation, allowing someone to talk without, how do I put this? It's one thing to have this, you know, the strategizing session of how are we gonna win. That doesn't help. What does help is just giving a person an opportunity to validate their feelings. That is what's effective, because the reality is, in most cases of bullying, the reason it's bullying, as I've said before, is there's nothing the person can do to win. And every attempt they make to take control of the situation only empowers the bully to make them more miserable. The only path free is out. And it's one thing to recognize that you have to put up with someone for work, but you are not required to be best buddies with that person. And I mean, the problem with the sheer number of hours that are required to work in video games is a lot of your social groups do come from work as well. You just don't have the free time to cultivate from outside. But there are different groups of people that you can, you know, spend more or less time with. And sometimes it's not, where did it go? Oh, sometimes it's not even a question of avoiding someone completely. It's working out strategies in advance that, you know, you work out a deal with someone that if that person starts bringing up a sore point, a third party can intervene and say, you know, let's not talk about that. And, you know, the nice thing about that is you're not saying it, someone else is. And that someone else is usually somebody who's more empowered to do something about it. I mean, ideally that someone is a manager. The problem is when a manager is actually the bully, and that's a very, very common reality. It's often people in positions of power who abuse that power, because you don't have power, you can't abuse it. And that's the last thing I kind of want to touch on this topic, is that a lot of people say gamers are bullies. when in fact gamers are just loud and frequently obnoxious. You have to have a certain amount of power over a person to be a bully. Now, they do exist. I mean, a guild leader who's a complete asshole, yes, they are a bully. But someone who is just, say, an idiot on Twitter, the thing that a lot of people claim is cyberbullying, if somebody's just swearing at you and saying stupid things, they have absolutely zero power over you. You can block them, and they are done. When it becomes bullying is when people start tearing into your life, and that is a difficult thing, because precisely that kind of behavior is what I'm seeing prescribed to solve the problem. People can't learn to do better if they're afraid to try. And I see a lot of people in video games right now afraid to even try to engage because they're already so convinced in advance of a negative outcome that they end up behaving not ideally, because they think there's no way they're possibly going to be accepted. So they have their backup, and they're jumping at shadows, and they seem like they're the aggressor when in fact they're the one that, you know, was picked on first. Now, that doesn't mean that it's okay to bully because you've been bullied. Most bullies were bullied. But there's a threshold of understandable response that I don't think is being honored here. People are allowed to get angry. People are allowed to be pissed off. Like, God, there are some people who I have learned a lot from that started off on completely the wrong foot, you know, we did with each other because I was a games journalist. But wrapping up on the solutions bit, that's another tricky thing, because a lot of the quote-unquote solutions, a lot of the strategies are done through facilitation of communication with groups of people who have been bullied and blah, 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 blah. It might feel temporarily better, but doesn't solve the ongoing problem that structurally there are a lot of systems in and around video games that encourage and allow bullies to bully.
Hey, I'm Starlene.
Hi, Starlene.
You know it.
We're not gonna race, are we?
All right, head inside.
No, I don't.
First race starts in a few
I don't want to.
minutes.
But anyway, this is something that isn't going to be solved overnight, but I just wanted to, I guess that's kind of a mountain, kind of apt for where we're leaving this, but this is something I'm going to work on, because I have done this work, and I know that, you guys aren't wrong when you say these things are being told, they don't work and they're not going to work. You're right. And if you have any advice, leave a comment, send me a message on Twitter. We'll figure this out. But what I will ask is, don't attack the people who are misguided. It doesn't help if they do have nefarious intent, like some people believe, or they are just looking for attention. You're giving it to them. But also, maybe they are trying to help and they're just misguided, and guess what? They'll find out soon enough that they're wrong. And like I said, I'm talking about issues, not singling out individual people, because it's not about that. It is about the issue. This is something that's super important to me. And we know what works, and we know it doesn't work. It's just too many people who haven't done the training think they have the solution. We end up being back at square one all the time, and that's frustrating. But, eventually it gets sorted out, and we'll figure it out together. So we're going to use this as a mountain, even though it's just kind of a lumpy island. But it still works. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out.